Our next speaker is an entrepreneur whose most recent startup was recognized by Inc. magazine as the fastest growing company in America. Think about what that takes, and note that this is just one of his achievements. He was a platoon commander in the Navy SEALs 3 times. He holds more than 40 patents, and he's sold over 10 million units of his inventions. In fact, if you work out of a gym, odds are that you've used one of his perfect push-up machines. He's the author of the acclaimed book, Be Unstoppable, 8 Essential Actions to Succeed at Anything, and he's working on his second book, Build Unstoppable Teams. He now spends his time working with organizations around the world like ours to help them develop their very best leaders. Also of note, Alden grew up on a farm in Massachusetts, and his father was a large animal vet, so he's no stranger to our industry. Please give a warm welcome to an internationally recognized entrepreneur, business executive, C-suite advisor, military leader, author, Alden Mills.
I want to be a Navy SEAL. I want to be a Navy SEAL. Run with me if you dare. Run with me if you dare. When my granny was...
That's a first. I haven't heard that one before. I'll tell you though, another first that I just had this year was having someone like Carly sing the national anthem to kick off a conference. How awesome is that? Right? Carly, stand up. Thank you. You fire me up. So I've had a few conversations with the Kalmbachs, and you might imagine there's a little bit of persistence in those conversations. And I'm here today to have a conversation with you about a conversation that will come to you maybe when you're in your cellar thinking about those demons of doubt when they come knocking. Or maybe it's your team that's huddled around going, I don't know how we're going to make payroll. The bank's pulling our loan. We can't go any further. That conversation between can and can't. Paul mentioned it up here just a minute ago. It's in the head. It's also in the heart. And that is what I hope you take away from the conversation I have with you today. I'm going to tell you a series of stories. Each one has their own little twist to it. And each one of those stories, when you get into that cellar of yours and you're having those demons of doubt, you'll remember Instructor Memphis, what he was talking to us when we were about to go through SEAL training. Or you'll remember this guy when I was 12, sitting in a doctor's office with a doctor with a whole bunch of charts, telling my mom, he was born with a small set of lungs, Mrs. Mills. Look at him on the chart. He's failed every single thing. He has asthma. He has to learn to lead a less active life. May I suggest the game of chess? Oh, I had the pity party of pity parties. Mom comes up to me. She kept these nails really long for these kinds of moments. She dug them into my forearm. She goes, "What's wrong with you?" Mom, chess? I'm not any good at checkers. I'm already there, thinking I got to lead the less active lifestyle. And Mom's the one that came to my side with those strong nails and said, no one defines your limit but yourself. And that put me on a path that I'm going to explain to you over these next 45, 50 minutes. And take these stories home with you, bring them back and realize that everything you end up doing in business, and I know it's hard, I know commodity prices are doing their thing. I appreciate that Mother Nature's not always on our side, but I'm telling you, the 3 things we can control can change the destiny of where you want to go, no matter what it is. So let's start with showing you my first dream, the one that doctor said there was absolutely no way an asthmatic would ever go down this path. It was my first office building. I mean, who's excited about seeing a first office building, right? Right? Come on! A 42-story office building. except it wasn't vertical. It was horizontal. This is the great mighty Jimmy K, an SSBN nuclear ballistic submarine. But this one was special because on this particular submarine, we have my own little office space. It's this little chamber that was retrofitted to be on the back of the James K. Polk. And on the back of that little chamber exists my desk. Most people don't even know we have these. These are called classified combat mini submersibles. And this is me right there, mission commander. The whole idea of this system is that we go sit out in international waters with 200 plus people on a ship, and 2 to 6 SEALs would go penetrate and go into harm's way. That way there was plausible deniability. I had waited 10 years to get there. I was the kid that when Sequest came up, or Flipper, I had my mask on and my snorkel sitting in front of the TV. I couldn't wait to get and drive a little submarine. That's what I wanted to do. And so now it's the ripe old age of 26. I get to go on my first deployment overseas. The commanding officer brings me into his office the night before we deploy. And scene goes something like this. Mills, you've had a great warm-up to going on deployment. You've got a terrific team. You've got great people. There's a lot of things going on over there. I want you to remember 2 things. Should you get into a firefight, make a decision. Go left or go right. But don't sit in the firefight. If left is the wrong way, you'll figure it out real quick and go right. But you're being paid to make a decision. Lead the men left or right. Yes, sir. Got it, boss. Now, number 2, where's your letter? Letter? What are you talking about? Sometimes there's some kind of weird humor in SEAL team, and I was like, you want me to send you a birthday card from overseas or something, sir? And he's like, no. Should you come back on your shield, don't leave me with nothing but a flag to give your next of kin. I want you to write a letter. It's to your next of kin, and know that could be the last piece of written communication they ever get from you. Whoa, I hadn't seen that coming. And oh, by the way, if you don't come back on your shield, but one of your men does, you'll be handing that flag to their next of kin. I suggest you have them write letters as well. I'm 26 years old. What do you write in a letter like that? My next of kin at 26 was my mom, my dad, my brother. And next slide, please. And in that moment, one back, please. And in that moment, you just start thinking about, okay, well, I've got to make amends. I got to make amends to my brother. So I said, hey, Andrew, I'm sorry I threw that rock at your head in 3rd grade. I told my parents, I'm sorry I totaled grandma's station wagon. And then by the end of the letter, you get back to it and you start saying, if you read in this letter, know that I died doing what I loved. And how many people can say that? And mom and dad, thank you for giving me that opportunity to go after it. And then I didn't think anything of that letter until I had to write another one. And then I had to write another one. And then I put those letters away and didn't think about them again until 2003, when my wife gave birth to our first son, Henry, in June. And the letter really didn't come about until my buddy Neil was the first Navy SEAL to die in Afghanistan in the fall. And I knew Neil had to write a letter to an 18-month-old boy that wouldn't know his dad. What did he say at that point. And that got me thinking. So I wrote a letter to Henry. And it was not very good. It was kind of a whole series of things like, hey, don't pee on a fan, you know? Don't do the stupid things. Be nice to your mom. And then Charlie came along 2 years later, and unfortunately a couple more of my buddies had died, and I penned another letter. And I did it again, and I did it again with John, and then finally with Yum Yum. And Yum Yum is William. And by the time I got to William, I got the storyline down a little bit more. I got the storyline to talk to him about what happens when you're dealing with the things when everybody else is against you. And it started by telling him a story about why they do what they do in Navy SEAL training. And so it starts in that letter with this guy, the creature from the Black Lagoon. This is the first thing you see should you enter into the quarterdeck of Navy SEAL training in Coronado. It's an ancient Hollywood movie set character, and he's got a wooden plaque on his chest that says, "So you want to be a frogman." Now, frogman is World War II nomenclature for now what's called a Navy SEAL. And to get to see this creature, you have to do a PT test, a physical training test. Push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, a swim, and a run. They're not actually that complicated. There's 2 minutes of each, and it's an 800-yard swim, a 1.5-mile run, pants and boots. You do it 2 to 3 times, depending on where you're coming from. At the Naval Academy, they probably made you do it about 5 times before we got there. And then when you show up, they don't put you in the SEAL training. They put you in a holding area called fourth phase. It's a pre-phase training. They put you in these old World War II outfits, and they march you around, and they start teaching you all the different nomenclature. And you get a little introduction to what a sugar cookie is. Running in the cold water, rolling around on the sand, back and forth. And then at the end of the 7th week, on a Friday, they give you one last PT test. Exactly the same one that it took to get there in the first place. Most people, it takes 2 years to get to see the creature from the Black Lagoon. And right before they do this test, first phase officer comes out. Instructor Memphis. And Instructor Memphis, he walks with a limp because his left butt cheek was blown off by a rocket-propelled grenade. He'll tell you the whole story. And he walks out and he says, "Candidates of class 181, you gather around here." There's 122 of us. "Come on over. I want to talk to you about something kind of important. It's how to make it through SEAL training." You see, it ain't that complicated. No, sir. You just have to decide how much you're willing to pay. You see, now I know for a fact 80% of you ain't willing to pay the price. You see, y'all want to be a SEAL on a sunny day, but there's a problem. Your country don't need SEALs on sunny days. No, sir. She needs them on scary days. When it's cold and dark and wet and that crack over your head, somebody want you dead. How bad you want to be a SEAL on that day? Well, that's what I want to know. That's my job. And here's how we're going to do it. I have to create a conversation between here and here. And you know how I'm going to do it? I'm going to tell you. You see, I like those Japanese swords. You know those samurai swords? You know how they make those? We're all standing there. We take a piece of metal And then they heat it up. And then you know what they do? They bring the hammer and they pound on it. And then they stick it in cold water. You know how many times they do that to make a sword? 2,000 times. That's about what we're going to do to you in just my phase. There's 3 phases of SEAL training. We're like, oh, great. Yeah, so let me tell you how it's going to happen. You see, you're the metal. Right here, this grinder right here, piece of asphalt with little fins painted on it. This right here, this is the crucible where we're going to heat you up. And then out there, that's the cold water. Now, while he's talking, 26 instructors come out. Oh, and my hammers, well, that's these guys right here. They're all standing there. So, before you decide to take this little PT test, you have a conversation with yourself. You think real hard about how much you're willing to pay to be a Navy SEAL. Because we don't need you on a sunny day. Okay? So now you go, have a nice sunny San Diego day, and good luck on that PT test. You pass it, I'll see you Monday morning. Bye now. Instructor Memphis. You're all standing there, 122 of us, took 2 years to get there. Oh yeah, man, we're in. We're going to pass this. 2 years to take that one last test. And how many decide to pass it? Give me a percentage. 20%, wow, tough crowd already. 10%, okay, that's really hard. Remember, this is 30 weeks of just basic training. One more. 5%. Woo! Okay, 50% pass, right? We go from 122 to 64 to start. You talk to some of them. Hey, what happened? Johnny, you could run 10 times faster than me. Kind of freaked me out a couple of times, seeing these really strong guys quitting. He's like, yeah, just wasn't my day. Somebody talked to me and it wasn't going to work. And you know what would happen? The guys who got together, hey man, what do you think? You out? Yeah, I'm out too. You know, when Paul was showing that support system, it goes both ways. It goes both ways. You surround yourself with people that are saying, we can't really do it. Man, misery loves company, right? You just hop right in that bandwagon. Or you surround yourself with, I'm all in, man. I'm doing this. We start 64 people. And it starts pretty quick. That first conversation, we meet Instructor Psycho. Very first day on Monday morning. And Instructor Psycho, he had come out of the Navy Experimental Dive Unit. A lot of people don't know about this place, but if anybody's a scuba diver and they try and figure out when you get the bends or you get what's called bent and they stick you down over a long period of time, those were usually Navy SEALs that they would test on. And this was one of those guys. And he'd walk with a tick a little bit and he'd kind of jump around and he'd say, hey guys, you know what we're going to do next? This is my favorite evolution. And you'd be looking at him and then all of a sudden he'd go, no, drop down on the pool deck. And we're all down in the push-up position and he'd go, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do my favorite thing. We're going to do a 300-yard swim. Keep your heads down. And then you're going to float for 10 minutes. And then you're going to bob, and then you're going to go down to the bottom of the pool deck and get the mask, and you're over. And we're sitting, we're not sitting, we're in the push-up position, all 64 of us, and you're going, wait a second. The PT test, an 800-yard swim, like 300 yards, well, that shouldn't be a big deal. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Light goes off. This is trouble. You're going to do it with your hands tied behind your back and your feet tied together. Welcome to drown proofing. You're going, what's the conversation you're having with your head right there? What? Your hands tied behind my back, my feet tied together. First conversation, why? Why am I doing that? Because in case we get captured by pirates so we can walk the plank and swim away, right? And you're like, well, wait a minute, why would SEALs be training to get captured? And then you start going on, well, if that's after why, the next series of questions are how? How? How am I going to do this? Everything I've ever learned is I need my arms to swim. And they're taking them away. Bam! He got 2 people right out of the gate on the first evolution of the first day of training. Welcome to drown proofing. This is what it looks like. And I know what you're thinking. That person way down on the bottom there is actually about to finish, but it's really uncomfortable because you have to let all your air out of your lungs. And you know how long you can hold your breath when you have no air in your lungs? If you put your head underneath the water right there, it would sound like a whole bunch of like dolphins and whales dying together. Those 2 people quit, and then he puts us in the water. And do you know what happens to everyone who gets in the water? Instructor Psycho gets in the water with you. Now, that's not always a good thing, but he actually got in the water. And they didn't tie your hands behind your back right out of the gate. They just tied your feet together. And then they start to show you, they start to break down the barrier in your head that you don't need your arms to swim. That if you start using your head and you start kind of inchworming, and if you're okay looking like a total idiot in the beginning in the water, and you get your ego out of the way, you can do it. You can get through it. And everybody who started the drown-proofing evolution 2 weeks later, they passed the test, but they had to try. And Instructor Psycho was the one to create the conversation to say, because you know you're having that conversation of impossible in your head. And they wanted to see who, right out of the gate, when they heard, nope, that's impossible, can't do it, or no, the why in your head, nah, that doesn't make sense. And you kept having these conversations. And the big conversation happens in the 6th week of training. The 6th week of training is when Hell Week is. And maybe you've heard of it. Some call it the toughest military week of training in the world. But Hell Week is so difficult because they start you on a Sunday night, they take you to a Friday afternoon, and they give you a total of about 3 hours to 3.5 hours of sleep for the entire week. Now, some of you farmers out there, you may be like, I got that. I've been there. During breeding season, okay, I'm with you. I didn't quite have that experience. I did grow up on a little New England farm, but we didn't have to stay up for 5 hours, 5 days in a row. And not only that, they have instructors every 8 hours coming at you. New, fresh instructors. You're carrying your boat around. You're doing these stupid little inchworm games where you're losing a whole bunch of skin on different areas of your body, and they're sticking you in the cold water. And by the end of the week, that instructor has a whistle in his mouth, and he has 1 whistle, crawl forward. 2 whistle, stop. And you're ripped to your studs. You're just broken down. There's nothing left. And you're running on gas, fumes. And it's at that point that you decide, I'm all in. I'd rather die than quit. At least that's where I got to. And in that first night, we're down to 34, 33 enlisted and 1 officer, yours truly. From when we started at 122, 64, now we're down to 34. And this is surf torture. Surf torture is when they put you in the water and they put you in about waist deep and you sit down. And this is December in San Diego. The water's 58 degrees. The outside temperature is about 45 degrees. And it's the very first time we're doing surf torture at night. When you do it in the daytime, you got the sun, right? You can still see heat. But at night, things are dark and scary and cold. Everything feels colder. And the first scene here is with Instructor Boston. And it goes like this. Hey, Alden Mills, you take your class and you get out in that surf zone. Link arms, walk out. A little more. That's good. About face. Link arms again. Take seats. Yeah, that's good. All right. Hey, put the lights on them. I want to make sure I see them out there. Good. Now, here's how it's going to go. You're going to stay in that water until one of you walks out and says the magic words. You know what they are. I want my first quitter. And here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you a little lesson in pyrotechnics while you're sitting in that water. This is a pop flare. You take the top off. You put the primer right underneath with the top. You look for something hard, really hard, like my thigh. And you take it, and you hit it against your thigh. It fires off this 1,000,000 candle watt bright white light, and it's got a little parachute on it, like those little green Army Man parachute things you'd throw as a kid, right? And it comes down, and he goes, you see that? That's going to burn for 54 seconds. And I'm going to fire these off sequentially. That means one after the other until you walk out of that water and I get my quitter. So you do whatever you want out there. You sing your song. We're singing She's a Grand Old Flag. And I'm firing these off. And that went on for a while. And he's firing them off, and you can see it. He's starting to get a little more fired up like a rabid dog. And behind him is this big berm. Keeps the public away. And there are a whole bunch of former Navy SEALs up there. And they're all coming to make sure that Hell Week is as hard as when they went through. Of course, it never is. It was always harder for them. And he's firing them off. And he's getting frustrated because he's kind of working. He got an audience behind him now. And he turns to the doc and goes, hey, Doc, you bring that ambulance over here. Park it right here. Yeah, that's good. Open the door. Let them see how warm it is in there. Big F-350 modified truck with a cab on the back that's got this red X or cross, right? Opens the back, and I kid you not, big plume of heat. We all stop singing. Oh. Oh. Ha. Fellas, you like that, huh? It's toasty warm in there. Hey, Doc, come on over here. Let's give the boys a lesson in hypothermia. Doc, not a Navy SEAL. It's raining outside. He comes over. He's got his Gore-Tex all up. He's got his clipboard and his chart. He's looking at it. He goes, meanwhile, he's got a little megaphone. Puts it in his face. A clinical hypothermia is a 4-degree drop in your body core temperature from 98.6. Yeah, Doc, that's great. Tell him about the symptoms of hypothermia. Oh, well, the first symptom is you can't control your shaking. Boom! We all start shaking like this, and we're looking, hey, man, are you cold? Oh, I'm cold too, man. You think we got hypothermia? I don't know. It's cold, though. Then he goes, Doc, how long you got to be in the water for hypothermia? Chart, flipping through. Well, 20 minutes. That's my 24th pop flare, fellas. Guess what? You've been in the water longer. You could have hypothermia. Doc, tell them what happens if you stay in the water longer. Doc, you could die. Say it again, Doc. You could die? Come on. Boys, you want to die for this? And you know what I got in that ambulance? I got hot cocoa. Huh? Got him. Petty Officer Smith breaks ranks, walks out, we're like, no, 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 don't do it, don't do it. Comes up, and you can always see a quitter, even from afar, especially if you're in the military, because the very first thing they teach you in the military is how to stand. Shoulders back, stand tall, stand proud. And here he is. Arms are rolled forward, head's down. And Instructor Boston goes, Petty Officer Smith, what are you doing out of the water? I want some of the hot cocoa. Ha ha, you do you? Come on, let me hear it. I quit. Okay, come on. Hey, get him to the next division. Now, you listen to me real clearly. Class 181. Did I say that I had hot cocoa for quitters? Did I? We're all standing there in the water. Mm-hmm. You think there's hot cocoa on the battlefield? You think you get something for quitting? You get nothing. You only have your team. Now, what I did say is you can get out of that water. And you can get out of that water just long enough for this doc to check you out. And then you're going back in. Because I want more quitters. Welcome to Hell Week. That's the first 2 hours. I had 110 hours of this. Right? And you know what happens? By the time you get to Wednesday morning, they tell you you got to make it to sunrise Wednesday morning. We did. We were at 18. One officer, 17 enlisted. And every single one of my most senior enlisted guys had already left. I had only junior people left. And do you know when most people quit? 2 times. They quit before an evolution. And by the way, the Navy's done a lot of studies on this. It's really expensive to put this on. They quit before the evolution. They quit, and you know what they do before the evolution? They tell you what they're going to do to you. They tell you about the next 8 hours. They tell you how miserable it's going to be. And they really build it up. And they psych themselves out. They go, whoa, they jump way far ahead. You get to the point where you just got to go, I got to do one more step. Or like that kid on the football field, I just got to take one more bear crawl. And then the other time people quit, they have this saying, it's darkest before dawn. They quit around 3 to 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, when it's coldest and it's darkest, and they can't see the light yet. They actually don't get a lot of quitters in the middle of the day. It's when you can't see the light, when you're stuck in your own little cellar and you're playing the head game. And so, why do they do all that in the first place? And why is it pertinent to you? I mean, who's going to go through SEAL training? I saw some young men and women, by the way. We're accepting women now. They're doing it because they want to know about your platform. The platform, the God-given platform that we have. The mental, the emotional, and the physical. They want to know who's driving. Who's driving the platform? Instructor Boston, he'd call it, that's your weapons platform. You don't need any fancy things. You just need your platform. Your body or brains obeys your brain. Your body is a brain housing group. The condition of your body is going to determine the condition of your mental and emotional capabilities. Now, on the mental side, there's a couple of things we're born with that you should just be aware of when you're going into your own cellar to have that conversation with yourself. We do come pre-programmed. We come pre-programmed with the fact that we are built for self-preservation and protection. The brain does not like the unknown. It does not want to go out of the comfort zone. It wants to find the cave and run away from the T-Rex. On the emotional side, feel, believe, and behave. You heard Paul say it himself. What you're thinking can drive your behaviors. How you feel and creating the bridge between why you're doing something, why you're sticking out. Why did I stick it out? Why did this asthmatic kid who suffered mightily stick it out? Because I had been bullied as a kid. And I didn't want to go back and talk to those bullies from my little hometown and hear their voices saying, I told you so. I knew you'd never amount to anything. You're a quitter. I'd play that loop in my head again and again when it got to the point where I didn't think I could go any further. And when you get there, you're fighting between when you want to thrive versus survive. The brain wants you to survive. That's all it really is here for. You got to will your brain to say, figure out how to get us through this bankruptcy. Figure out how we don't have to cut off the first or the top 100 feet of a building. Figure out a new niche for us to play in. Figure it out, brain, instead of giving me excuses. Now, this was all well and good in SEAL team. But I learned pretty quickly in my first civilian experience. I did go to business school right after SEAL team. It was a great transition for me. And then I got thrust in my first little business, and that was, I was like a junior sales guy in a little software company out in California. Didn't know anything about software. VP of sales was trying to figure out what to do with me. And he's like, hey, how about you do our sales kickoff? I'm like, oh, I'd love to. Great. He goes, all right, Mills, you go do it, and you tell us what you're gonna do. Great. Let's get everyone on the beach. This is in San Francisco. And let's meet at 0600, and I'll start the kickoff. They seemed pretty fired up about it. Remember, they're all civilians. And the first thing I thought would be great is that we could all bond and do some surf torture together, get in the water, right? And I had this one guy, his nickname was the Tractor. He's like, yeah, I can handle anything. I'm like, okay, great. Well, we're just going to get in this 54-degree water, and we'll just sit there for a few minutes and just feel alive. He got hit by a wave. He felt that water. His eyes rolled in the back of his head. He looked like a dead chicken. His tongue was sticking out going, Aah! I was that close to having to give the Tractor CPR. VP of sales comes over and he goes, you cannot do this in the civilian world, Alden. This is not good. So I get it. SEALs, civilians, they're different. But that conversation with Instructor Memphis, dealing with the impossible with Instructor Psycho, or how about the doc flipping through the clipboard, telling us what the average human being gets hypothermia? Or how about the doc that told me at 12, look, here are his stats. This is his test. He's got small lungs. He just needs to be less active. He's got asthma. Those people, and then there's also Instructor Boston out there. Instructor Boston, that could be called the bank in the civilian world. They show up when I created the world's greatest fat-burning device. Have you ever seen this? You might be the first person who's ever nodded their head. You've seen it. I love that. Do you know what it does? Here, let me help you. It's a rotating weight system. Does that help you? No. No, that's a problem, by the way. Seeing something, don't know what it does, and I'm telling you all about it. I raised $1,500,000 from 37 of my closest friends and family to learn $1,475,000 worth of ways not to launch a product. That's right. You want to hear Instructor Boston in that world? Instructor Boston in that world shows up with 5 influential investors. They're all from the finance world. They don't know anything about consumer products, but they wrote me a check. And you know what they're telling me? It's over. You don't even have enough money to pay the lawyers and the accountants. Here's the best part. You're embarrassing yourself. Get a job. Things got a little tougher when my closest investor, my father-in-law, has this nice second home overlooking some water. Mom, mother-in-law, and wife are in the kitchen. Father-in-law says, hey, Alden, come with me. Let's go out on the point. I want to have a conversation. His son was my swim buddy in SEAL team. He's a big guy. Puts his arm around me. Can you hear me all right? Oh, yeah, Pops. Yeah, I hear you great. I just introduced him to my next product after this has failed. Good. I didn't raise my daughter to live in poverty. You got 6 months to figure this out. You hear me? Yeah, I got you loud and clear, Pops. Good talk. Let's go have some dinner. I wasn't very hungry that night. I just introduced him to my next product, and he gave me 6 months. He was my last backstop before I was looking at total wipeout bankruptcy. He'd loaned me just enough to try and launch the next product. And the next product were these. Have you seen those? A lot of people have. The perfect push-up. The perfect push-up took us to this. Inc. magazine calls us up after 2.5 years and goes, do you know you're the fastest growing consumer products company in the country? Over 12,000% growth. Did over 100 million in sales in 3 years. Did we plan that? Absolutely not. We were 60 days from total bankruptcy. I couldn't even find a media company to launch $5,000 worth of infomercial media for the push-up in the beginning. So you know what I did? I took out 3 ads in the back of Outside Magazine, Men's Journal, and Men's Fitness. And I did it on my wife's credit card because mine was totally zapped. And we just chipped away. And we chipped away. Of course, all you see is the front page article of, oh, Navy SEAL invents perfect push-up. Overnight success. That was 7 years in the making at that point. And when that came out, it was January of 2009. Everybody remember business in 2009? 2008? The second Great Depression? We were flying high until we come into our first bank meeting in the first quarter of 2009, and they say, Alden, I know we just loaned you a $15 million line, and I see you've got a 8.8 outstanding. Welcome to Workout. We've decided every loan we've made in the last 6 months, we're not going to honor it anymore. What? Has anybody been to Workout? Do you know what Workout means? I was personally guaranteed. I am sitting there going, oh, I thought I'm going to work out with the bank. You know that conversation you're having? There's a doc right there. He's flipping through the hypothermia charts, except this time it's my financial statements telling me, well, you know, you missed this ratio, you missed that ratio. Your covenants are just not what we're looking for. So, by the way, we're going to send a team out to value your home. They sent it a little quicker than the message got to my wife and our 3 kids and 1 in the oven. Can you imagine that one? Thank God she didn't miscarry when the guy showed up. Well, I'm sorry, what are you doing here? Oh, your husband hasn't told you? We're valuing your home. We might be repossessing it. Oh! Not a good place to be. The bank comes to you and he says, I'll tell you what, Alden, you know, if things aren't going too well, we'll negotiate with you on how many pennies on the dollar you can get for that 8.8 million. So let's start it at 70 cents on the dollar. I turned to them and I said, okay, let's start it in a different way. I won't negotiate on dollars, let's negotiate on time. Well, what are you talking about? I'm talking about paying you back in full, but not in 30 days. How about 300 days? How about give me some more time? They weren't buying it. We had to go out and find a consultant team. The consultant team interviewed us and they wanted to know, are you really committed to doing this? I'm committed. I want to keep this company going. One thing led to another, and we paid them back within 300 days, but it was clawing one day after the next. And we had some other problems. We were pretty product focused on multiple different lines of the perfect push-up. So we had to create an entirely new set of products, things that I personally wasn't even ready to adopt in the beginning because my ego got in the way. We were getting into calorie monitors and iPhone armbands and rubber bands and elastic straps and things for Walmart. Anything and everything to keep the lights on and try and find new niches that would work for us. Now I get it. I'm not in feed, but business is business. And the things that they taught you in SEAL team are exactly the same things that you deal with down in that cellar. That conversation in your head, wondering, hey, everyone's telling me I can't do this. Stop listening to those people. That's the wrong support. Go find the people that are whispering to you, you can do it. You know, when Instructor Memphis would talk about that conversation, the head whines. The head constantly is thinking about, how do you know you can do this? Who do you know can do this? It's constantly trying to figure out ways to keep you alive and keep you safe. But the heart, it whispers, get up, keep going, you can do it. And the best way to give you that is my own little piece of artwork that I want to share with you. Now, I'm a Navy guy. This is the horizon, right? And I drew that boat, by the way, right there. I had a little help from Yum Yum, my 8-year-old. And does anybody know how far you can see on the horizon when you're a 6-foot-tall person standing in the bottom of a little rowboat, like you're standing on the surface of the water? Does anybody know? 4 miles? Another one? 12, 15? Just under 3 miles on a perfectly calm day. Okay? That's how far you can see on your horizon, right? Except here's the problem. Your competition, maybe it's your goal, is way past the horizon. And this is where that conversation comes in. You know, some people will talk about faith, and the definition of faith is taking the next step when you can't see the full staircase. It's the same thing when you're at sea and you can't see any of those obstacles, which I felt like a lot. By the way, there's another bankruptcy story I could share with you at a later date, and if you come to one of my breakout sessions, you'll probably hear it. But it's during these time periods, it's easy to deal with, relatively easy to deal with what you know right in front of you. That's the known area. But the unknown area is where your brain starts messing with you. Because the unknown area represents the area that the brain doesn't like at all. And that's the scary area. You don't know it, you're staying away from it. Maybe what you're staying away from is something to deal with the internet today. Maybe it's entirely new product lineup. You don't know that, but this is the example. And part of what Kalmbach is doing here, for some of you, maybe their ship's a little bit bigger, and they can look a little bit further over the horizon and you say, hey, come on, link arms with me. Let's move past that horizon and we'll go into the unknown together. We'll support each other. But at the end of the day, it will come down to this, and I call this my little outcome accounts, and it's what I used every single time I got in the worst and toughest places. And I steal this from accounting, which I'm terrible at, and if you use QuickBooks, you'll know about T accounts. And You just draw a big T and you define that goal. What is very specifically you're after up top. And then right below it, put a positive and put a negative. And then underneath that, you're going to write what's the outcome if I achieve the goal. And then most importantly after that, who does it impact if we achieve the goal? And the final piece is how it makes you feel. Because you make the bridge when you're in the dark days between dealing with that darkest before dawn moment and how will it make me feel when I graduate? How will it make me feel to go back and tell those bullies, hey, I made it through SEAL training. I did something you probably would never be able to do. How would it make you feel if Thornapple Valley had made that link for just one more week, one more time? How would it make them feel knowing on the negative side how many families they impacted because they shut down their company? How selfish they were that they didn't keep going. And when you link both sides of the equation, both on the positive and the negative, and to be brutally honest, the negatives powered me more than the positives. Every time we looked at bankruptcy, this one time, I went in and I practiced it on my boys in the middle of the night. Henry and Charlie are asleep, and I went in and I said, hey boys, Dad filed for bankruptcy today. I'm sorry. We're going to have to sell the house and we're going to move away. You tried doing that experience once? I couldn't do it. I could not physically try and do it. And I'd go back to the computer and be like, I'm going to figure out another way. I'm going to call another teammate. We're going to figure this out. And it may sound overly simplistic, but I promise you, any of you, whether you're on the farming side or the distributor side, you all have those sellers. You all have those conversations. And speaking of conversations, I'm going to share one last story with you. And it's about my most terrifying moment in SEAL training, my first military free fall jump. Now, I'd done a lot of jumping before that, but this is the first time where I had to pack my own parachute. And going to the Naval Academy where I'd failed way more room inspections than I had passed because I couldn't make my bed properly, I couldn't get the quarter to bounce, I couldn't make my socks smile the right way. Folding terrified me. And you have to do these 15 folds absolutely perfectly for your chute to open. So here it is, you're in Arizona. You're standing in this ramp of a C-130. It's about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. First light's coming up. It's really loud, and I'm the first guy to jump. I got a master sergeant from the Air Force standing right here. And he says, "Sir, back up to the ramp." "Put your heels over the ramp. Look down." Pretty high, isn't it? Funny. "Will you jump?" Been doing this for 3 weeks. "Good. I have one last thing to tell you." Now I'm like, "What?" "You have the rest of your life to figure out how to open your parachute, sir. Good luck." Boom! And pushes me off the ramp. What? Spinning through the air. It opened, happy to say. But his point was, it was up to me to open the chute. That was it. And that was by just about 60 seconds, by the way, at 14,000 feet. And I end on that story because there's two elements to it. One, we're all packing our own parachutes. And who we decide to jump with is up to us. But it's up to us to make the call. To make the call, to take the next step. It's up to us to try another way. And it's also up to us how we decide to jump off the ramp. You see, there's 3 ways you can go off the ramp. You can get pushed, you can get kicked, or, and I've seen this, I've seen somebody go off the ramp like this. They come up to the ramp, and they stick one foot over, like there's like a kid on a end of a diving board. They're trying to get 6 inches closer at 13,999 feet and 6 inches. Like, you kidding me? Or you can go this way. This is the way they want you to go. Head first. Boom. You know how motivating it is when you're in the front of the airplane and your whole platoon is going head first. Boom, boom, boom. You're like, oh, I'm going with you, baby. Ram. Everybody's totally committed. All in. And that's the last piece of persistence. That's what has to happen. It isn't a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. It's all in, all the time. That's how this works. That's how America was built. That's how you will feed our communities, our country, even the world. It's all in. That's what we're looking for. So when you embrace this conference, and maybe some of you will come to my breakouts, know that you can do it, that it's up to you and the people you surround you with. And judging by what I just saw with Paul Kalmbach, you're not going to go wrong by linking up and jumping with them. So God bless you and have an awesome 2018. Thank you. Thank you.